The Marathas in Delhi, Abdali in the Doab, and a flooded Yamuna between them. Odd restlessness brewed in the north. The supply routes and communication lines for the Maratha army were now stretched. Letters and supplies were delayed. Sadashiv Rao had planned to collect the dues and tributes on his way north, but was now struggling at it. The moneylenders in the north were waiting for the result of the Maratha-Afghan conflict. Hence, new loans were not readily being offered. Maintaining armies, especially good cavalry, was a very costly affair. For example, 10,000 horsemen with 100 rupees a year would need 10 lakh rupees. Hence, it was necessary to have money available all the time if you are marching with an army. Almost every Maratha campaign had the same crisis. Surajmal Jat, who had joined the Marathas, wanted Delhi to be governed according to his wishes and requested Imad-ul-Mulk to be reappointed as the Wazir. Although Imad was a previous ally, he had crossed the line when he had murdered the Emperor Alamgir Sani. Zinat Mahal, the wife of the murdered Emperor Alamgir Sani, was outraged by the presence of Imad-ul-Mulk in the Maratha camp. The royal family had been against him since Imad had murdered the emperor. Imad had also fled Delhi twice when the city was in crisis. Hence, chances of Imad-ul-Mulk being appointed as the Wazir were slim, since the Marathas had to maintain the favour of the royal family. For now, he appointed Naro Shankar and Mir Khan Toke with an army of 5,000 men to maintain and defend the present Maratha interests in Delhi. Surajmal Jat and Imad-ul-Mulk expressed strong disapproval on not being handed the administration of Delhi. Sadashiv Rao advised them to be patient, stating that in order to give them the charge of Delhi, he will have to first take permissions from the Peshwa. A month passed in this dilemma. Meanwhile, at Ahmad Shah Abdali's camp, Ahmad Khan Bangash and other Rohillas were upset that the Marathas captured Delhi. They lost the motivation to fight. They started making preparations for their return to their own bases. Many horses from the Afghan army had also died at the camp in Anup Shahar due to a disease. The Afghans were working hard to replenish their livestock. Abdali, in desperate need, demanded 2 crore rupees from Shuja-ud-daula. Shuja-ud-daula was shocked at this request. Not only was the amount big, but this was the second time that Abdali had asked him for money. He complained about this to the Afghan Wazir Shah Wali Khan. Shah Wali Khan instead advised him not to enrage Ahmad Shah. Shuja-ud-daula, perplexed, almost decided to quit the Afghan alliance and return back to Awadh. Now, with open displeasure in the Afghan camp from the Rohillas and Shuja-ud-daula, in stepped Najib Khan Rohilla with his favourite card of religious jihad. He convinced Shuja-ud-daula and the Rohilla warlords to stay true to the cause and defeat the infidel Marathas. Since if this alliance was broken and Abdali leaves without defeating the Marathas would then march onto their territories and finish them to gain control over the lands and the Hindu shrines. Najib Khan also mediated with Abdali to reduce the demand of money from Shuja-ud-daula from about 2 crores to 1 crore. Across the river in Delhi, Surajmal Jat was now in turmoil. He reiterated his request for control over Delhi. He also proposed that the amount he was due to pay to the Peshwa and add to it the payment for next 4-5 years be waived off. He also requested that Roop Ram Katari, who looked after the interest between the Marathas and the Jats, be awarded lands worth Rs 60,000 in revenue. Sadashiv Rao accepted to waive off the dues and also the allocations to Roop Ram, but he was not ready to release the administration of the capital, Delhi, to the Jats. Eventually, Surajmal Jat and the ex-Wazir Imad-ul-Mulk left Delhi and returned back to the fort of Vallabhgarh. People termed this as a betrayal from Surajmal Jat. This is not true though. Some of his troops were still with the Maratha army. Correspondence with him still continued after this incident. A letter dated 16th October 1760 written by Sadashiv Rao to Govindpant Bundela mentions that Surajmal is planning to send his son with an army. Sadashiv Rao specifically mentions that the Jats are our allies and there is no uncertainty about it. The financial crisis in Delhi was dire. The Peshwa had earlier ordered that Sadashiv Rao should be paid half of the collections from the north and the remaining half should be sent to the treasury south. This half of the revenue was no longer enough for the army. In dire need of money, Sadashiv Rao ordered the silver roof of the Diwan-e-Khas-o-Am in Delhi to be liquidated. Its silver was used to mint coins worth Rs 9,12,000 in the name of the king Shah Alam. This sum of money helped the Marathas with the expenses for about a month. Some say that Surajmal Jat abandoned the Marathas because of this action. The dates clarify that Surajmal Jat left Delhi on 4th of August and the Marathas detached the roof on 8th of August. Both the parties, now halted because of the rains, now explored the chances of a treaty. Ahmad Shah Abdali proposed first. He had 3 demands. Sirhind to remain the border, the Marathas to retire south of the Chambal river, and Shah Alam to be proclaimed as the emperor, with Shuja as the Wazir and Najib Khan as the Mir Bakshi. To this, Sadashiv Rao replied, the Sindhu, that is the Indus River, to remain the border between the kingdoms, Delhi to continue under the Maratha control, and its management will be decided by the Marathas. The cunning Najib Khan tried to best his interest. He proposed the river Attak to be the border, the Marathas to retire across the Narmada, and all the region between will be under the control of Najib Khan Rohilla, who would rule it as an Afghan and Maratha confidant under the name of the Mughal emperor. Hearing the proposal from Najib Khan, Malhar Rao Holkar was so annoyed that he immediately banished Najib's ambassador. Najib Khan Rohilla's proposal would have negated the growth and authority of the Shindes and the Holkars in the north. Meanwhile, Sadashiv Rao, who was now camped at Shalimar Bagh in Delhi, received an intel that the fort of Kunjpura to the north was guarded by Najib Khan's relative Najabat Khan. The fort had stores full with supplies that Abdali had saved for his return journey. He immediately called for a council. The intel was shared with his trusted aides. Malhar Rao Holkar opposed the idea of marching further north, since it would further stretch their communication and supply lines. On the other hand, Balwant Rao Mehendale argued that the march to Kunjpura was essential for the supplies stored there. Damaji Gaikwad weighed in. Eventually, the attack on Kunjpura was planned. Sadashiv Rao informed Govindpant Bundele and Gopal Rao Barve in the Doab about this new development. He writes, "We will soon capture Kunjpura. Bundele and Barve should set fire in the Doab and destroy the supplies of the Afghan army. Let's watch how Abdali reacts to this. If Abdali moves south onto them, the Maratha armies would then cross the river at Kunjpura and trap Abdali between the southern and the northern Maratha armies. On the contrary, if Abdali crosses the river as a response and marches on the fort of Kunjpura, then plan to fight under the protection of the Kunjpura fort, while Abdali's supply lines from the Doab are cut by Bundele and Parve." With this plan, the Marathas left Delhi at once. Sadashiv Rao sent an advance cavalry to the fort of Kunjpura. The artillery and infantry were to follow with him. The troops of Shinde, Holkar and Vinchurkar took their best men and marched ahead as an advance company. Kunjpura was strongly fortified. Also, being close to Yamuna, there was a chance of enemy retreat across the river. This resulted in a siege. Soon Sadashiv Rao arrived. With the fort besieged, he immediately sent for Ibrahim Khan Gardi, who was in the last company with his heavy artillery cannons. He was accompanied by Damaji Gaikwad, who was in the rear guard protecting the artillery. Najabat Khan was the commander of the fort at Kunjpura, while Abdus Samad Khan and Qutub Shah were the 2 other chiefs who were helping him with this fort. This was the same Qutub Shah who had murdered Dattaji Shinde at Buradi Ghat. Najabat Khan manned the fort from inside while Qutub Shah and Abdus Samad Khan were defending the walls with 7,000 troops outside the fort. As soon as Ibrahim Khan Gardi arrived, the Maratha artillery opened fire. A side of the fort began to collapse under heavy bombardment. The 7,000 troops which were positioned outside were exposed to annihilating firepower of the Maratha artillery. As Abdus Samad Khan and Qutub Shah tried to enter the fort, Damaji Gaikwad quickly breached the defences to enter with his cavalry army. The Marathas attacked with hostility. They killed a large number of people in the fort. Eventually, the army inside surrendered. Najabat Khan, who was severely wounded, died shortly after the fort was captured. His son Dilawar Khan managed to escape. Najib Khan's religious guru Qutub Shah and Abdus Samad Khan were captured alive. Both of them were immediately executed. The victorious Maratha army found about 7 lakh rupees and 5,000 horses and camels and more than 10,000 sacks of grain in the fort of Kunjpura. Some of the captive Pathan soldiers were ready to join the Maratha army. They were enrolled in Damaji Gaikwad's troops. While taking the inventory of the livestock, the Marathas found the famous Jawahar Gaj elephant. When Dattaji Shinde was killed at the Buradi Ghat, this famous elephant was taken away by Qutub Shah. With their lucky elephant found, the Shinde men were very happy that day. The Maratha army now had enough food and supplies. They also found enough money at Kunjpura. The troops that had not been compensated for many days were now paid in the form of grains. The festival of Dasera approached soon. The triumphant Maratha army celebrated Dasera with great enthusiasm and joy. There was a belief in the army that this victory had changed their fortunes. The sound of cannon fire, trumpets and war cries roared in the vicinity of Yamuna. Little did they know what was brewing across the river. When Ahmad Shah Abdali received the news of this defeat at Kunjpura, he was furious. He could not stand the slaughter of his brethren. He at once focused on crossing the river. He deployed his local experts to inspect water levels and crossings from Shahadara to Kunjpura, anywhere and everywhere. Some local men like Gulab Singh Gujjar, Himmat Singh and Bole Khan helped him to find suitable river crossings. Historians differ in the accounts on the event of Abdali's crossover to the west bank of the Yamuna river. Some say he crossed the river on an elephant. Some write that he prayed for a few days and then wrote the verses of the Quran on a silver plate and threw them in the water, which floated to show him the shallows, while some say that he checked the depths of the river with the help of bamboo sticks, a trick that the Marathas had used earlier in 1737. Any which way, finally at Gauripura on 25th of October 1760, the Afghan forces began crossing the river, led by their leader Ahmad Shah Abdali. It was only a matter of time now that the swords would cross.